good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are, and welcome to Thorogood's event, Getting More from Your Finance Data with Databricks. Before we start, let me introduce myself quickly. My name is James Leonard, and I'm a Senior Business Intelligence and Analytics Consultant at Thorogood Associates. I'm also joined today by my colleague Andrew Kennedy, who will be taking you through the latter part of today's session. So what I wanted to do was just start off with a quick introduction to Thorogood. I'll then introduce Databricks, and Andrew will take us through some of the use cases for finance data and Databricks. So for those of you in the room who aren't familiar with Thorogood, we're a specialist data and analytics consultancy with over 30 years of experience delivering business intelligence and analytics solutions to leading enterprise organizations. The solutions we deliver are still based on our founding principle. That is, by locking onto the business goals and then unleashing the technical and analytics capabilities, we can maximize the opportunities from those business objectives. We maintain this business focus across a range of delivery areas, right through from initial strategies and roadmaps, proof of concept and pilot delivery to the full solution implementation, and then the wider rollout of the solutions. We do this by not only maintaining solutions, but empowering individuals and the organizations that they work for to use the tools that we create. We do this with the help of our technology partners, so we're an independent consultancy, meaning we don't partner with just one vendor, but work with the best of breed technologies in the data and analytics space. As you can see, we're talking about Databricks today, and Databricks is one of our technology partners. We do this all for enterprise organizations, so a sample of which you can see on the screen now. So now we've done that, I'll introduce the Databricks Unified Analytics Platform. So what is Databricks? So Databricks builds on the open source Spark platform. So Spark is a popular platform for running data analysis and machine learning at scale. And the team who originally came up with Spark are the people who originally set up Databricks. So Databricks takes all the advantages of the Spark platform and extends it to make it easier to use and make it ready for the enterprise organization. One way it does this is by integrating with Azure and AWS. So Spark requires a cluster of computers to be set up, and Databricks automates this process. So it's simple as choosing the number of computers, their size, and then Databricks will handle the rest. On top of that, Databricks will handle auto-scaling. So you only pay for the computing power you're actually using. That can mean big savings if you're running occasional analyses that need a lot of computing power for only short periods of time. Another way that Databricks builds on Spark is by adding notebooks, which allow the users to work in a mixture of languages supported by the Spark platform, whether that's SQL, R, or Python, choosing whichever language the user is most comfortable with or whatever's best for the task at hand. Databricks also has a number of the most popular machine learning frameworks built in. So again, this simplifies the setup so that data scientists can go straight to whichever framework is best for their analyses without having to worry about installing it separately, instead spending the time on that analysis. On top of this, Databricks also has enterprise-level security built in, and a number of other enterprise features for collaboration and integration with a number of front-end business intelligence tools as well. And what these features really combine, at the moment, make Databricks a pretty hot technology. And we really see interest across two main types of use cases. So firstly, for ETL at scale, particularly with cloud data sources and data lakes. Databricks offers us a lot of flexibility to connect to a wide range of data sources and different file types. And in that use case, to say use Python scripts and libraries to transform the data and then output to, again, whichever file type or data store you need. On top of that, you have the ability to scale that compute power up when needed and then turn it off when you're done so that you can have your kind of end-to-end data processing run much quicker than if you were having to pay for the computers to do that all of the time. That's one use case. The other use case we see is for advanced analytics. So we have the flexibility to switch between languages and to use whichever machine learning framework you need to approach your business question. This is a massive plus point for Databricks. On top of that, the notebook format that Andrew will show us in a moment allows users to take notes in and among the scripts so that data scientists can explain all of the steps they're taking and hand over the output as a report, ensuring that the whole analysis is documented and repeatable should any questions come up. So with that, I'll hand over to Andrew, who's going to take us through how we can use these different kind of functionalities within Databricks in some of the financial use cases we see with our clients.
Now we've introduced some of the features of what really is an impressive Databricks Unified Analytics Platform. I'm going to talk you through the journey that we've gone on with a number of clients in bringing together their finance data and in bringing more insight and gaining visibility on what's happening across the organization. And as I take you through that journey, we're going to show 3 different use cases, and I'm going to talk through how Databricks helped us and helped the customer in each of those. So first, I'll show you how bringing finance data from across the global organization, putting together data from multiple business units, really gives you the ability to see what's happening and to take a more unified approach to delivering on the business goals that you have. Second, we'll take a look at a very specific use case from an audit team who are using Databricks to get an overview of what's happening globally and taking it to the next level in highlighting issues so that they can prioritize where to focus their attention. And finally, I'll show you an example of where a manufacturer that we're working with is using finance data in the data lake combined with third-party data sets to support another group of users, key account managers in this case, in finding the win-win scenarios that bring benefits for both the manufacturer and for the retailer by leveraging those finance data sets alongside other organizational data. So just to draw it back a bit, I wanted to start explaining some of the challenges that we've seen with customers with global data sets and really for finance data sets in particular. And there are a number of challenges here with sourcing the data. So, for example, different data sources for different parts of the organization. That introduces challenges in aligning the data, and also it increases the value of bringing the data together so that it's all available in one place to get the whole picture. And then when bringing the data together, there are challenges in aligning the income and the costs to the organizational hierarchy in a way that allows the data to be used to drive decisions and to track the impact of those decisions. And a key challenge is balancing the need for a model that's simple enough to analyze with the reality that global enterprise organizations are complex. And then there are challenges with getting access to the data, and that's especially true if it's spread across multiple systems. And in that case, often data owners can have differing priorities, and ultimately that can lead to delays at a time when it's vital to be able to move quickly and to respond to challenges and opportunities as they're emerging. And this is just a summary of the challenges seen by the organizations that we've worked with, and that we've been able to help them along a journey that takes account of these challenges, delivering better visibility while creating a platform that supports ongoing innovation. And so as we think about the journey that we've gone on, I've broken that journey down into 5 steps. And a key thing I'll point out as we work through these steps is that we deliver business value right from the start, and we add business value at each of these steps along the journey. So for some of the companies that we've worked with, also the journey's evolved as we've gone along it. So it's good at the start to have a strong vision for the direction that we want to go. But on the other hand, we want to be able to adjust and adapt that based on the new business opportunities and the new priorities that emerge as we go along the journey. And the flexibility to do that comes from the data lake approach, and in particular, Databricks that we're talking about today is a great fit for that for a few different reasons. First off, data storage scales as the data grows, so we can add new data sources, new use cases, even to the point of flexible analysis of unstructured or streaming data. And so we don't need to try and predict what our data volume is going to be in 3 years' time. We can build based on what the data volume is now and know that we can grow and expand to fit that, being driven by the business value that we see in those new opportunities. Secondly, the flexibility of the platform, so the ability to use Python libraries and so on, means that we can deliver on the widest range of use cases all within this one common platform. So whatever data transformations are required, whatever the data science approaches you want to use, we can implement all of those within this Databricks data platform. And obviously, there are things that we expect around security, resource management, logging, and so on. And Databricks has appropriate provisions for the functionality you'd expect for enterprise organizations. So let's look at the steps along that journey. And as I've said, we'll take a look at a few of the use cases along this journey as well. And so the first step in that is to bring global data into a single platform. Now, bringing all the data into a platform at once is probably too big an ask, given the challenges with sourcing the data and the variety of data that we see in an organization. So typically, we start with a subset of the data that you know will support some valuable use cases. And so that way, you start just by giving analysts easier access to the data, and by doing that, start to see a return on the investment. And also, you're giving the analysts a visibility of what data is available, and that's another way for them to spot the opportunities that they can use to deliver value. So I want to show you what that looks like in Databricks and some of how our analysts might start to use and access the data. Databricks is a tool that you access using a web browser. It's a cloud-based tool, as James mentioned, available on either Azure or AWS. So today we're going to be showing it on Azure just to give you a sense of what it looks like there, but it's very similar on both platforms. From this home screen, we can access the various different components. And so James mentioned some of the scalable computing, and that's set up in the clusters tab. But what I've got highlighted here is the cluster that we're going to use today. And if I were to go into that, we get various different options for the setup. Key thing, though, is that I'm going to use the one that's already set up. So very quickly, I'm going to dive into the workspace and switch into the notebook. So James mentioned the notebook format as one of the great ways that we can interact with Databricks without having to know and understand really what's going on with the clusters. The notebook format allows me to directly write code on top of the data lake. So we've got the data that we're accessing is stored as CSVs. You can access various different data sources and store it into the data lake. So here, this is a set of notebook steps, and as we're going through, we can load the data in. So here, the first line is reading it from a CSV file, loading the geography data in. Immediately, we can start to see what's there, and from this display function at the end, we'll create, by default, it creates a table, but very quickly you can switch across and you can see a graphical view of that. So I've got my made-up area managers here. Don't worry, this data is all obfuscated. It's not real people that we're showing here. But if I was looking at my area managers within the organization and looking at what level of sales they're driving, for example, I can pull that up and I can see the data and see how many of the records are associated with each of those area managers. So very quickly, all within one tool, able to load the data in, start analyzing it just by writing a couple of lines of script, writing a line of SQL code, able to see that as dynamically there's a table or a plot. And moving from there, I'm loading the different tables in. So that was the geography table. Here we're pulling in the calendar. Alongside that, if I look at this table, we've got a list of customers. And then from there, going on to look at the different dimensions. And we load a whole lot of data in, all within one notebook. I can see the data as I'm loading it in, and I load it into the platform. As I say, that means that analysts can pick up from there. They can pick up the data and start using it. And really, that's the key to getting the data into one single platform, multiple sets of data in there, and the analysts can start using it, start analyzing it, and start pulling it into one place and running their analysis on it. Once you've started to load the data into one place, and like I say, that already starts to deliver benefits, the next level of benefits comes from starting to align the data and build it into a structure that enables and even encourages analysis across the different business units and across, importantly, multiple data sets. And the benefits, once you've got that data aligned to global definitions and so on, are that you spend less time manipulating data and more time doing the actual valuable analysis. And also, it's easier to build consistent, robust analysis that you know maps to well-understood global hierarchies. And so I'm going to jump back into Databricks and build on what I've already shown, but I want to talk a little bit more about the use case this time. So this is looking at the same set of data, but we're taking an example here from a health and hygiene products manufacturer. And when we started on this journey with this customer, their finance reporting was prepared separately by each business unit, with all of the challenges that gave around consistency. So each unit was choosing their own metrics. So each business unit, actually, there's a risk that they're choosing the metrics that give them the most flattering figures to then report back into the global management teams. And by consolidating all of the data into a single platform, aligning the global metrics, we were able to give them one view of what's happening across the organization. So the global leadership team were able to look at the countries side by side, look at what's working and what isn't, and to get all of the visibility that they need to drive a holistic strategy aligned to the common goals. And so that was a real success story for that customer. And that happened by doing what we were just looking at, so loading all of the data into a common platform. And here, the first step, like I said, the first step of the journey was just getting the data into one place so that analysts can start looking at that data side by side. And maybe they need to do a little bit of work to make the different data sets work together. So in this case, we have a fact table for the US, we have a fact table for Europe, and those two data sets looked very similar. You've got your date, basically the particular product that's being sold, the store code that's assigned to, and the value of the products, along with, in this case, they've got the amount of stock that's held in stores, got quantity, wholesale value, what are the different royalties, net sales, and there's different items within the finance P&L. all stored within one data set. And so that was very similar for a couple of their different regions. In this case, we're showing the US and Europe is virtually the same. And then we take a look at Asia, which has basically the same data. We've got the date, we've got the SKU, the store code, and then the various different metrics. So whether it's average price through to things like, you see again, the store stock, but then maybe slightly different financial metrics depending on the regions. And those are stored in this case in columns. And so by bringing it all into one platform, we give access to the analyst to use all of that data together. But there's still a bit of work for them to do in aligning it so that they could look at it side by side. And so that was what we did in the second step on this journey, was to have a second Databricks workbook, second Databricks notebook even, that does some of that transformation. So this was something that you could build up, for example, with an analyst ad hoc in the first instance, but then productionize it. So we were saving the data sets and making the output data sets available. So in this case, that meant taking the data from Asia, for example, and transforming that so that the Asia data was pivoted and shown in the same format as we had for Asia and the US. So all of that data could be looked at side by side. Any analysis that worked for one region, the analyst and in particular the global team were able to apply it and run that same analysis for every unit and see what was happening. So like I said, that was a real success story for that customer in being able to align the data sets and look at the data just as one global block of data. But the next step when you've done that is to start to look at how you show the data to the global leadership team. And so these were some of the outputs that they had in that case, on that use case. That consolidated global view gave faster visibility of strategic metrics. And so the metrics that were chosen by the global leadership team, they were also able to drill to the full P&L for any category, any country, and any customer. So real flexibility in the analysis that they were able to do, and were able to do really quickly for all of the different units. And so, outputs, you can see a copy of one of the dashboards on the screen, or a kind of mocked up version of the same. But the outputs listed on the right-hand side there, the immediate view of key global metrics. The member of the leadership team were able to use the interactive dashboard to find immediate answers to their questions, but also they had access to the underlying data sets that they were able to go back to analysts with various different questions to get answers to more complex, high-value questions that were able to drive decisions across the organization. And so stepping back to this journey again, that dashboard really leads us into the next step here. Standardizing KPIs allows us to faster identify challenges and opportunities, and we can track key metrics and spot changes as they occur and react to those so that we're responding quickly to the market changes. And the key thing here is that we're on a journey towards a single global view that gives leadership teams and other key decision makers a trusted source for the business knowledge that gives them what they need to take the best actions and to deliver on the organization's priorities. And then the next step, having standardized KPIs, built dashboards based on that the global leadership team can use. The next thing to do is start looking at some of the end users and the solutions that target specific focus areas that are identified out of that unified view of the KPIs. When we're helping customers to think that through, there are a couple of different things that help us to prioritize which focus areas and which target use cases are best for this. The first thing to try and identify is repeatable analysis. So you really want to target use cases where you've got several people running the same process or very similar processes. And where that happens, that's some way that you can get a kind of multiplicative effect on the return on investment. So by building something once, you can use it in multiple scenarios, saving multiple people time, improving the analysis that they're doing, and improving the decision for multiple decision makers in your business. And then the other thing to look for is which business decisions will be improved by making use of more timely and up-to-date data. And that's somewhere that by automating the data flow into end-user solutions, we can make sure that they're making the decisions based on data that's up to the minute and really up to date. And so even Databricks will support even up to real-time data using the Databricks streaming capabilities. If you've got data that's constantly flowing from the source and that's something that's useful, you can make use of that to make better decisions based on the most up-to-date view of what's going on. And the example we've got here is one that's particularly relevant. Here we had a global audit team who used to run their process kind of country by country, traveling to the different business units and sifting through all of the audit data with the local teams that they have. And that was leading to challenges where issues were only caught specifically at the point of running the audit. And so there was a higher probability of issues recurring where, it happens once, they're catching it at that point, but maybe not putting in processes to catch it again and again. That's taken on a special importance, especially some of the things that have been happening this year with difficulty in global travel. So the way that audit team works has had to be entirely rethought. And what they've started doing is using Databricks to crunch through the whole massive volume of global data, looking at complex invoice data that used to be looked at on a country-by-country basis, and now doing that globally. And by doing that, we're able to help them surface and prioritize some of the most important and urgent cases that there are globally. And so instead of being focused on one country at a time, they're now able to look at issues that go across countries, tackling the common issues across countries, and then getting in contact with local teams and helping the local teams to resolve those. And it's also freed them up to focus their attention where it's needed most, right at a point in time when it's been really important for that customer to have visibility across all of the invoices, to understand where the invoices are in the system and to get any issues fixed and corrected quickly, so that suppliers are paid right and paid on time, and that the customer is able to keep a full track of what's going on in their system and to optimize and prioritize any challenges they're seeing in that. And so this is an example of one of the dashboards that we delivered for them as part of that. So in this case, it's a fairly simple example that we're showing on the screen. Again, we've got fake data and made up numbers for the webcast. So this is a much smaller view of what they had going on. They had kind of hundreds of thousands of invoices at any point in time that they're looking at across the world, across all of the countries that they operate in. So this was another consumer goods company that we worked with. In the case of what we're showing on the screen, they were tracking whether the invoices were raised before the purchase order was processed, for example. Equally, they were able to track things like where they suspected there were duplicate invoices or invoices raised against the wrong PO. But even things through to like who the invoice approvers were meant to be, whether they were available, whether they were taking a long time to approve, whether they were on holiday, out of office, whatever, or invoices that still needed to be approved that were waiting approval before payment could happen, looking at things like what the timelines were for that whole process. Really, there's a whole series of complex questions requiring very specific, that in the past required very specific business knowledge, but that we were able to codify into business logic. And again, Databricks helped us to put that very specific business logic into place, and to do that across a large volume of data and providing an up-to-date view of where the customer were against that whole list of checks, so that the audit team really could be refocused from being a team who were doing a lot of their own data crunching, doing that for specific business units at a specific point in time, to having a lot of that automated by Databricks and freeing up the audit team to be able to immediately see where the issues are, and then spending more of their time working with the local finance teams to resolve those challenges and make sure that the focus and the attention was on the resolution and the challenges that there were before the invoices could be paid, so that the invoices could be paid on time, and helping out both their cash flow and the supplier in that way. And so we've gone through a kind of series here from bringing data into a common platform. We've structured it. We've added global definitions of the KPIs, and now we've even started to build out a suite of applications targeting specific business processes. So what next? Well, logically, the thinking next is, if we've got this much value from bringing in our finance data sets all into one data lake, and we've built a lot of value on those, we'll want to look at how we can combine that with other data sets within the organization. And again, here the great thing is how easy Databricks makes it to scale and to expand to bringing in additional data sets and to sharing data sets between different parts of the organization. So we've brought all of the finance data into the Databricks Delta Lake, using the Databricks Delta Lake technology. And so we've done that for finance, but maybe in parallel or maybe afterwards, some of our other teams have been bringing in key data sets into the Databricks Delta Lake. In this example, we're going to look at something where we had the finance team working with the sales teams, so looking at how you can bring those data sets together. So this is an example of where we worked with the finance department of a global consumer goods manufacturer to build an application based on finance data blended with third-party sales data. And that was something that the finance team were able to deliver as a value add to the key account managers in the organization, to give them a better view of the win-win opportunities. So previously, key account managers had manually been looking up the various different data sets to look at what are the sales levels, what are the company priorities, and trying to understand the competitor landscape as well, in what was a really long and arduous manual process. And sometimes that gave them really good results, but the challenge is that there also wasn't really any way to validate if they'd found the best result, because often they would explore and find one avenue of exploration and find a really good way of doing it from that approach. But equally, there would be many other opportunities or other potential routes to take decisions that were left unexplored. We worked with that customer to combine the finance data alongside their full P&L data with the third-party data that gave them a view of the sales value for the customer, as well as a wider view of the competitive landscape across other manufacturers. The account managers were able to get a clear picture of which were the products in the mix that are giving value for both the manufacturer and the retailer. And in that way, they can focus on the win-win strategy for driving increased sales along those products. And because the account manager then has the accurate information in front of them, that means that they're going into those conversations with the retailers, with their customers, confident of the position, confident of what it is that's going to drive value and how they can make the best deals that work for both sides. And so this is one of the views that they use. So this gives a view of the products, the categories, the brands, and allows the key account manager to see how the retailers they're working with compared to the other retailers that are competing, the retailers that are available in the data set that represent the competitors for that retailer. And so I'm not going to go into too much detail on this today because we've got another webcast that's available as a recording that goes into great depth in terms of what we did with that customer around this scenario of trying to find the win-win scenarios. But I think it operates as a great example of where we've been able to help a client bring in data from the finance organization along with data from another part of the organization to deliver value. So that completes the steps in the journey, although even once you've got to that point, I'll highlight the journey isn't finished. By that stage, you'll want to keep innovating, whether that's adding more data, adding more use cases in, both for the finance department and wider. But you know from the start that you could do all of those additional steps in the journey later on with the flexibility that Databricks Unified Analytics Platform provides. And so for each of the examples I've shown, we've looked at dashboards that are presented to end users, backed by the scale of the data transformation that Databricks gives. And it's that flexibility that allows you to tackle the analysis for any of those business use cases. Hopefully the key question in everyone's mind by this point, now that we've talked about some of the use cases, is how do we get started with Databricks and with that journey? One key message I'd like to give on data lakes and on Databricks Delta Lake is just get started. In the past, with on-premise data solutions, it was really important to spend a good chunk of time at the start figuring out, what's your 3-year plan, what's your 5-year plan, and the data strategy for working out all the use cases that you're going to need to tackle. A key advantage of cloud solutions and Databricks in particular is that the flexibility to add data and to run a really wide range of analysis means we no longer have to commit to what analysis it is we want to run in 5 years' time. Because let's face it, none of us knows what the plan and the business priorities are going to be at that point. And so a great way to get started is to find a valuable slice of the data that supports 1 or 2 really important use cases that will support some of that global analysis and use that to start your journey. So we can help with that. One of the things that we've helped customers with in the past is a 2-day workshop to explore Databricks and explore some of the use cases it will help drive in your organization. And the start of that path is this kind of initiation workshop. It's a 1 to 2 day workshop starting with a technology introduction. If you haven't used Databricks before, it's really useful to get a bit of an overview of how it works, and then following that up with a hands-on session with typically sample data, but guided examples that let you get hands-on and see how Databricks works, and get some of your analysts excited about the possibilities for that, both for data science and for real-time analysis of the wider data sets. And then taking a day, maybe 2 days to do a hackathon. And by that, we just mean getting hands-on with the data, maybe a couple of teams in your organization, taking that data set to tackle 1 or 2 use cases and saying, how far can we get with that? Can we prove that there's a valuable use case in here in 1 to 2 days? Where we've done that, we've helped organizations to find valuable insights really quickly, but also to think about what the next steps might be. And so that initiation workshop can be a really valuable way to get started. If you want more details, I've put my email address on the screen. Please get in touch, and we can help you to think through how that works. That brings me to the end of the content for today. Like I say, do get in touch if that workshop's of use to you, if there's anything else you want to discuss out the back of today's content, and also take a look on our Thorogood's website, thorogood.com, and take a look at some of the events there. There are plenty of other sessions there that will give you some more inspiration on the types of analysis you could do on your data. With that, I'll leave you for today's session. Thank you for attending.